Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's midday Western U.S. regional forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I want to begin first with a snapshot of North America here from yesterday, May 30th, that's Thursday, and I want you to be seeing the smoke and the haze. We have wildfires in parts of Canada, parts of Alberta, that are actually bringing smoke into parts of the Pacific Northwest, specifically parts of Montana. And some of that wildfire smoke is spreading across Canada, but also got ingested in a weak upper-level low that was moving through parts of the Midwest. And it's just that time of year that we start to worry about this. And so while these fires bringing in some smoky conditions, which you can see here in this animation showing us where we have a smoke across the country, these fires right now are in Canada, but spreading some hazy conditions across parts of Montana throughout the next 18 to 24 hours here. So keep a lookout for some of that. But what I want to do is I want to talk about the change in the flow of the atmosphere. You see, we had seen strong zonal flow, but look at what it's done. It's broken into two pieces, and we have a bit of high over low, so we can see the flow pattern here has changed across much of the Pacific Northwest, and that change is going to allow some heat to be building into the Northwest while we hang into some cooler temperatures here, and that trough, as it sneaks through parts of California, is still going to keep a lot of shower and thunderstorm activity in the Intermountain West with time. And we've been seeing that over the last 3 days. Look at this map showing you the last 72 hours of total accumulated precip. We have seen a lot of scattered showers and storms, many of which were induced by lift due to mountains here, but that deeper trough, that's what we get in there. We've also seen showers and storms moving through parts of New Mexico, some places desperately needing this, although we've had some pretty spectacular thunderstorms down there as well. If we just stretch this back a bit, we're looking at the last 2 weeks here in these two precipitation maps. We can see that much of the West has been extremely wet. And when the data are released later on this week, later on next week, that'll tell us where May 2019 fits in the 125-year rank. I'm very curious to see how this wet weather, which has caused problems in California with like the cherry crop, I'm anxious to see where this puts us on the rank. Meanwhile, look at parts of Arizona, look at parts of New Mexico, very, very dry because much of the trajectory of the precip has come out right into the Central Plains and missed that area. So you can compare this to the map that's over here on the right, which shows you the last 14 days of total accumulated precipitation rather than seeing it as a percent of normal. In terms of temperatures, wow, look at this. Look at how cool things have been as they have sat in that deeper trough out there in the Western United States. And this is quite a bit different than we normally get at the end of May and beginning of June. Remember, this is the time of year where we start to watch for this, and I'll draw it in white. We start to see the flow pattern wanting to maybe more often feature ridging events out west, and those ridging events allow the return of the flow of moisture at the surface into what we know as the southwestern monsoon. We have not seen that at all this year. The flow pattern's been dominated by this deeper trough. And if there's been a place at the end of the month here that's been warm, it's only been parts of Washington, Oregon, and northern Idaho compared to average. So the question is, how are we breaking this pattern down, and what does it mean for temperatures and precipitation? Certainly, over the next 15 days, the European model is keeping a drier bias across much of the Pacific Northwest. The wetter conditions you see that are right in here into parts of Nevada and parts of southern Idaho and Utah, that is really coming over the next couple of days. You'll see that in a few moments. We are watching next week for a tropical system. It's not a hurricane. It's just a tropical disturbance, a low pressure area to sneak up into Texas. And as it does so, there's still a broader trough sitting here that this is going to interact with, bringing more rain to parts of New Mexico, southern Colorado, and to parts of Texas. But overall, when we compare the European model on the left to the U.S. model, which is on the right, looking at precipitation anomalies, they both carry a very similar story on the grand scheme of things. What about temperatures? Well, as that ridge, remember we showed it to you a few minutes ago, as that ridge moves in, look at the warmth we're going to be bringing. Both models really picking up on the heat in parts of Montana, getting back into the Pacific Northwest and then down through California. And we will be talking about the warmth spreading through California in more detail in a few minutes because, as I mentioned in our video on Tuesday, we're starting to see indications of midweek next week, some high heat there. As we get into the day 6 through 10 time frame, we will be watching an upper level trough sneak through parts of the Pacific Northwest, cooling things down a bit as the heat then spreads from Montana into the Central Plains. But overall, a warmer bias we can see here in California throughout much of the next 10 days. Now let's see those temperatures in action. So I'm going to play this out for you. It's a rapid play here of the next 10 days of temperatures, but what I want you to see is this. Friday, high temperatures you can see in our major basins like the Snake River Valley, the Columbia Basin, and the Central Valley of California. Let's get those drawings off there. You're going to see our temperatures really pushing up into the higher, up into the 80s, into the 90s with time. So Saturday, look at this. By the time we get into Sunday, we see 90s here in the Columbia Basin, mid-80s here in the Snake River Valley for the parts of it, all elevation dependent, of course. Look at the 80s moving into Montana, and then we start to see some more, I guess, seasonable temperatures kind of trying to creep back in to the desert southwest here. But my concern is as we get into middle of next week, so Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, you seeing that in California? The Central Valley has temperatures creeping up above 90. Now I want to take a closer look at those 90-degree temperatures. So we're going to do that with a much higher resolution view here. On Monday, 90 degrees creeping through much of the Sacramento and San Joaquin. We're going to see upper 80s in the Columbia Basin, and look at the upper 80s, lower 90s for parts of Montana. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday I'm concerned about, though. On this map over here on the right, anywhere where you see a black contour, see them? This right in through here tells me where the threat of getting above 95 degrees will be. So we're starting to see temperatures that can start to stress some of the crops we grow in the Central Valley of California. I've now flipped it over to Wednesday. We see that on Wednesday, look at the temperatures down here in the San Joaquin Valley, creeping up well above 90 to maybe above 95 degrees in some locations. I don't see the 95 degrees getting as far north as Fresno, but certainly there in the southern part of the San Joaquin Valley, some pretty serious heat. Things tend to calm down by the time we get into Thursday. When I say calm down, back into the lower 90s here. But overall, we get away from that threat. So it's really a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. Watch out for those 95-plus degree days to creep up from the south there in the Central Valley of California. And why that is, we're going to finally get rid of this trough. It's going to sweep over here to the South Central Plains. This ridge is what's going to keep much of the next 5 days very warm for the Pacific Northwest. But we will see change coming. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. Ready? So I click play. Let's stop it right there. By the time we get into our weekend, you see the ridge is in here, the trough that's over the southwestern part of the U.S., really in California, Baja. This is going to sweep out, draw moisture up out of the Gulf of Mexico from the Bay of Campeche, and then it's going to rain in parts of New Mexico. I'll show you that in a second. Other thing I'm watching, you'll notice a trough sweeping through the Gulf of Alaska, such that by Tuesday and Wednesday it hits British Columbia and then spreads into parts of, really mostly into Washington State by middle of next week. That's a cool down for Washington State, Oregon, and parts of Montana. Meanwhile, ridging is going on here. Remember, we talked about it. This is the heat middle of next week coming into California. Now, beyond that, we will see ridging return by the 9th, 10th, and 11th, but this is not the kind of ridging that we saw maybe back in 2017, where we saw these big ridges build in here that brought in a lot of heat into the desert southwest. This is a much different flow pattern. We'll take a look at what those temperatures look like in the longer term in a few moments here. In terms of precipitation, while we still have that upper level trough spinning here, you can see what it's doing to induce some mountain aided, the mountains are aiding in the lift of the atmosphere here, showers and thunderstorms. So that's what we're watching. This starts Friday at 6 a.m. and takes you all the way up to midday on Saturday. So why these scattered stuff here? Now, it doesn't appear as though our threat for rain through the Central Valley of California is very high at all. In fact, it may only be a stray shower or thunderstorm that gets in there. Overall, very dry. But parts of Nevada, parts of Utah, parts of Idaho, we can see here, see the storms coming up. Now, for those of you in New Mexico watching the video, you do see we actually have a severe weather threat in the overnight hours right there on Friday. So we're going to watch this area, slight risk of severe weather in here. Watch it one more time. You're going to see these storms blow up in that area. So keep a close eye on the radar if you're in that region of New Mexico farming and ranching. Looking longer term, this is the next 5 days. So we see much of the precipitation for our next 5 days is coming in the next 24 hours. But I want to talk about what you see in New Mexico down here, because when I add on from the next 5 days, adding the 5 days that follow it, you can see we're adding some more precip down there in New Mexico. So this is the next 5 days. This is the next 10 days in total. And also, remember that trough that comes into the Pacific Northwest? You can see it there adding some precip to coastal Washington. Okay, when we stretch this out longer term, we look at June 7th through June 14th. we do see warmth maintained here in the Central Valley of California. We see a cooler bias tucked away in the mountains. We see warmth staying in parts of Montana. Getting out to June 14th through the 21st, we start to see the rebounding warmth up here in the Pacific Northwest. We stay warm in the Central Valley of California, and we're shoving the cooler bias a bit to the east. This pattern, even though we're still watching that little tropical system that's going to be coming up, bringing some showers and storms into New Mexico as the trough sweeps through, and I showed you that just a few minutes ago right here, okay? That's coming in the next 5 to 10 days. What we're really paying attention to is that we do not build in the massive ridge that brings in the monsoonal flow. So that's going to be a bit of a delay, I think, in the arrival of that monsoonal precipitation. But again, if you are farming in this part of New Mexico, keep a close eye out over the next 24 hours, but then over the next middle of next week as that trough sweeps through, bringing in some rainfall for you. Okay? With that, I'm going to wrap up this forecast video. We at Nutrien Ag Solutions hope you look forward to our next Western Regional Forecast video. Hope you have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.